All right, class, AP Psych. So we're continuing with human development. We're going to talk a little bit about personality and then move on to cognitive development. So temperament, that's your characteristic, emotional, one's characteristic, emotional reactivity and intensity. And lo and behold, it is hereditary. So it's genetic, right? So personality and behavior are largely determined by genetics, but your upbringing can impact it a little bit. So a baby that is difficult, that cries a lot, intense, unpredictable, that's probably a genetic factor. There's some things you could do to get the baby to be easier. An easy baby is considered cheerful, relaxed, predictable, and pleasant. And again, there are some things that you could do to change that behavior, but most of the temperament is genetic. Difficult babies often drain their parents, leaving difficult babies prone to a neglect or lack of affection. Easy babies, on the other hand, are get a lot of attention and affection because they're easy, right? It makes sense. And parents trained to give attention and affection were able to get the baby slightly less difficult and more healthy. So again, the theme of the course, it's genetic. You are who you are. But parents, or some things can be done to alter a behavior. I have to say, Jack, I was panicked of what he would be like, and he definitely falls into that easier baby. Has his moments, but never really gave me too many issues. Was calm, relaxed. He also slept really well, which sleeping is genetic. How well you sleep. We went through that in a former slide, or unit rather. All right. Whew, we're going to continue. So, cognitive development, right? So, schemas, which I addressed briefly in the last video. So, what schemas are basically like concepts and frameworks that organize and interpret information. So, your brain's goal is to simplify the world, to recognize and evaluate it. There's way too much info in nuanced information that exists to understand it all. So your brain creates schemas. They so they write frameworks and concepts. I like to think of them like folders. And they group and automatically perceive objects and events to act. So I think I gave the example earlier, but the idea that a child learns that what a dog is, right? There's a beautiful picture of a little puppies. So a child sees the puppy and goes, dog, dog, great. Then they see a cat and they say dog because they've created like a little folder in their brain that all four-legged furry little animals are called dogs. Now they have to find out that there's different types of animals. So that's what schemas are. Think of it like little folders for different pieces of information as you get more and more information in the world. Um, so we are often confronted with objects, animals, and events that don't quite fit a current schema. So Tyler growing up, again, I just gave the same example. So um, if he sees sorry, a toddler grows up with a golden retriever for a scheme for dog based on golden retriever. Okay, he will need to analyze other dogs to fit them in the same schema. Meaning, if he sees a Chihuahua, has to understand that those are all dogs. So that's assimilation. It's interpreting our new experiences with our existing schema. So it's like when you find out more information about a topic that you know about. So think of like your math folder. When you were growing up, it was addition, and then you added multiplication to that schema. And now in high school, you have shapes, and that's geometry. I just call it shapes. But that's assimilation. It's like all these different types of math now go into that one folder, and you have to assimilate and understand that the topic was larger than you once thought. So toddlers, many of our own schema, they will arrive with new information that won't fit, so they have to accommodate. So again, that's my dog and cat example. So the takeaway from this slide is that when you learn information I like the folder framework concept, is up to you, but think of like your brain, build little different folders with topics on them, and that's how you're filing away information. If you develop more and more information about a topic, you have to assimilate, right? So the more and more math you learn, the more sciences, right? You have earth sciences in there with physics, and you have rocks versus chemicals, right? Those that you assimilate your brain to understanding what the concept of sciences, and then accommodate is where you thought one thing and you had a narrower mind, and then you develop more information. You have to accommodate for it, build different schemas. So I keep mentioning the same example, and here's a beautiful picture, right? Little girl, doggy, doggy, sees the cat, says doggy, confused now. I'm going to assume that's dad, has to now explain the difference between doggy and cat, and she is now going to create a new folder in her brain, essentially, a new schema. All right, Piaget. Our Swiss developmental psychologist. He dedicates most of his professional life, sorry, just kidding. All right, to studying the development of children. I don't mean this in a creepy way, but if you see Piaget, think children. It's again the observing in the children. He dedicated his life to understanding how they grew, how they developed cognitively, etc. So, first, we have the sensory motor stage, which is spanning from birth to about 2. So that's where Jack is, right? Infants primarily know the world in terms of sensory impressions or motor activities. So children in the first few months of the stage live in the moment. They lack object permanence, meaning that if an object is taken out of their sight, they forget it ever existed. It's not until about 5 to 8 months they begin looking for something hidden. In terms of impression and motor, this is more of a Freudian look, but everything my son touches goes in his mouth. It's that sensory interpretation. It's how he's getting to know something. He likes to throw everything as well, whether it's supposed to be thrown or not. He object permanence. I think this is so funny. I don't know if it's in one of these examples, but children that play hide and go seek, when Jack puts his hands over his face, he thinks he's now invisible. I don't think he understands the concept of invisible, but the idea that that's the object permanence, that's why hide and seek is so fun for them. When I put my hands over my face, like he thinks I'm gone, right? It's anyways, story rant on. So pre-operational. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Ranging roughly from 2 to about 7. Children learn to use language, but they don't comprehend mental operations of concrete logic. For example, if you see that picture on the bottom right hand corner, those are 2 different sized glasses. So if you were to ask a child which one is bigger and has more water in it, they would say the left one. It is beyond their comprehension that those 2 glasses have the same amount of water in it. Right? So it's that idea of thinking. I don't like the idea of concrete logic because I think it's a little bit more of abstract, although you're looking at it. But the idea of there's a lot of things that kids can't understand. They're in that pre-operational stage. They're visually told that larger thing, the thing that's larger must have more water in it. Okay, and then they're also egocentric. They are incapable of comprehending another person's perspective. So this is fascinating. So if you're going to go up to a 4-year-old and you're going to say, do you have a brother? And the 4-year-old say, yeah, my brother Jimmy. And then you ask the same 4-year-old, does Jimmy have a sister? She'll go, no. Because if it's not her, she won't get it. And I remember I was upset that my grandfather was sick and I was crying, and when I was little. And my mom's like, yeah, he's something about him being her dad. And I was like, that's my grandfather. And she's like, yeah, that's my dad. It was incomprehensible. Could not wrap that around my head that my grandfather could be someone else's dad. I only saw him through my own vision, which is that I had a grandfather. So that's that egocentric, between 2 and 7, where they really live in their own world and cannot look beyond that. And also, again, not to rant too much, although I think I'm going to end the video here so we have all our topics together. I'm gonna get anyways, sorry. What's interesting is the incapability of being empathetic at that age. So it's hard when a kid hits another kid and you go, oh, you hurt Johnny. That means nothing to that child. They don't know what it's like to be Johnny. They can only be them. All right, let me squeeze in one more here. All right. So the pre-operational stage, children also begin to predict the associate body language and emotional expression with behavior. So this is the theory of mind. So it enables them to identify people, moods, expressions as good or bad. So they can understand if a parent is upset, maybe offer them a toy or a hug, or behave well if their parent is angry. So they may not comprehend the reasoning why their parent is upset or angry, but they associate those visual cues with that person's sad. I'm going to make them happy. Okay, concrete operational stage, so about 6 or 7 to 11. Children gain the mental operations to enable them to link logic about concrete, right? So if you then show them those two glasses, they're going to understand that they're equal because they're now going to be able to comprehend the idea of volume. And then there's the formal operational stage around 12, when you begin to comprehend those abstract ideas. You ponder hypotheticals, you can predict consequences, and now that's when you move into the more abstract maths like algebra and especially geometry, and you have the potential for more moral reasoning. So you can kind of see those grade levels as well, where the first grade to about the sixth grade, how different your subjects and your learning was than when you entered junior high school and high school. It's to follow how your brain can comprehend different types of operations then. Okay. We're going to do one more on this particular video. So the zone of proximal development. So this is the development research by Vygotsky, who dedicated his time to researching language development. So the zone of proximal development theory is where children receive the minimal, optimal amount of support to encourage independent growth and development. So we find out that overprotecting and over-coddling inhibits a child from learning and gaining independence. Jonathan Haidt talks about this as well. There's a lot of literature, but Vygotsky was the first one that really noted this idea. So, and it makes sense. If a child never has to struggle, they don't learn on their own. They can also become complacent with, I can't do it, so I'll let someone else do it. And the zone of proximal development is essentially the idea that there's an optimal learning threshold through which a child needs minimal guidance, and the task is just slightly over their current capability. So this is actually something I have learned a little bit about in educational psychology, because my job is to try to bring information to you in a way that is not overwhelming and way too difficult. Because what do you do when you get something that is just beyond your comprehension? I can't do it, I ain't gonna do it, right? You shut down. Or if I give you something that's way too easy, you're like, this is a cake, and you don't pay as close attention to it. So the zone of proximal development is this kind of tightrope walk that we as educators and even your parents are constantly like moving through to help you develop but trying not to get you too frustrated where you give up, or making it too easy where it's not challenging or fun for you. Okay, so like I said, I'm trying to keep these videos to less than 15 minutes. So I don't want to rush them, so I'm going to end here. I hope that was helpful. The next section, we're going to talk about morality and parenting and our favorite phases of life. I hope everyone is well, and please let me know if you need anything.